Chairman, we're live.
Thank you, Donna. Let's go ahead and get started with a roll call. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Donna, if you can please give a roll call.
Representative Banks.
Here.
Representative Geringer.
Here.
Representative Larson.
Excused.
Representative McCann.
Here.
Representative Nicholas.
Yeah.
Representative Posey. Representative Tarver.
Here.
Representative Wiley.
Here.
And Chairman Brown.
Here. All present and accounted for at least.
One excused.
Thank you. So committee, appreciate y'all being here. Welcome to House Transportation Military Affairs. You'll notice that the vast majority of the bills that we're going to see in the first half of the session is going to be YDOT related, so we're going to get really used to seeing the director and everybody else. Welcome, Commissioner Willix. Good to see you, sir. What I'm going to do for this first meeting, since we're all relatively new here, is I'm going to start on this end over here with Representative McCann. We're going to just do a brief introduction, just name and general area that you represent, which House district, and then we'll kind of go through the housekeeping items. So Representative McCann, please.
Darren McCann from House District 48, Rock Springs. Thank you.
Thanks, representative of God's Country, House District 26, Bighorn Basin.
Rob Geringer, House District 42, Southwest Laramie County.
I'm Chairman Brown. I represent House District 9 here in Cheyenne. I got Cheyenne proper on the east side of town.
Ruben Tarver, House District 52, the north side of Campbell County.
I'm Bob Nicholas. I'm on House District 7, which is kind of the northwestern part of Cheyenne.
Cody Wiley, House District 39, Sweetwater County. I represent both Rock Springs and Green River.
Ivan Posey. I represent House District 33, Fremont County and Wind River Reservation.
Excellent. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you guys doing the brief introduction here. What we'll go ahead and start off with, we're all adults. We have a script that we're supposed to read and kind of give everybody the understanding that we address everything through the chairman. Be a little bit tighter on that this year than I was the past couple of years, just making sure that we address the chair when we're going through. That way there's limited interaction of discussion back and forth between the dais and the testimony table. So please make sure you're referring to the chair as you're going through. Same thing goes for anybody out there. Make sure that we're going through the chair for any questions and how we're directing those answers. Biggest thing for this is let's be respectful through this. If there's any contentious issues, I mean, roads are really contentious, so you're going to have a lot of high volume people in here. So just make sure that we're keeping everything going through the chair to minimize the amount of. Are we not live anymore? I just want to make sure that we're live to the rest of the. We're live online. Okay, all right, we'll keep it going. So. Okay, no worries. So the other thing that I will say is we did a lot of work over the past interim. However, these are the 67th bills. Gentlemen, these are not, these are not protected in any way, shape, or form. So I'd ask you guys to do your due diligence. Make sure that every time we come to committee, I will give you guys as much time as I can to give you guys the heads up of what bills are going to be coming forward. Would ask that if you are going to do any major amendments, you have those drafted and presented to Donna prior to the committee. So we can make sure that we read those in as needed. If we need to do amendments on the fly, more than welcome to do that. However, I would ask that if you are going to make major changes or anything like that, you bring them to the committee and that way we can see them as they lie. Beyond that, we're all welcome here to have questions. So please feel free to make sure you ask.
the scary reliance that we have with federal funding. We will always accept the federal funds. We could not afford not to. Those are income taxes that we all have paid throughout our lives of income tax. So getting some of those funds back on our infrastructure is important. So that was kind of the high level background on the why funding is so important and the discussion throughout the entire interim. It was great, robust conversations. LSO did a great job of studying all of the other states. They used the TCSL acronym for the legislative body across the country. I don't know what the acronym is. NTSL, thank you. To see what other states are doing with funding and see if any of those would work with us. And they presented those to this body. And what came out of it are the two bills that you see in front of you today. The first one is the severance tax and distribution, and the second one is the vehicle sales tax redistribution. So any question, that was about as fast as I've ever done it. Hopefully it was what you were looking for. Anything I missed on that? I talked very highly about the 400 million unfunded need. Those unfunded needs are not just roads. I mean, our agency is very broad. You know, we have obviously roads, we have bridges, we have highway patrol, we have emergency communications. Aeronautics, thank you. We have a very broad mission, and so those unfunded needs are not just, they all need to go to the roads. I mean, the state, this agency is very large, and the unfunded need is spread across the entire agency in that regard. Thank you for that. Any questions that I might be able to clear up?
Committee, for a brief overview, I just asked the director to touch base on pretty much what's been happening. I think you're my third or fourth director. I can't remember exactly which, but it's been the same song. We just unfortunately have to hear it on repeat, and it's getting louder and louder every time we hear that song. And I think the commission recognizes that as well. But committee, any questions for the director on their revenue history? Representative Nicholas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My understanding is that you also got $500 million roughly from the IIJA in addition to the ongoing funding. Is that accurate?
Director Byrne?
Mr. Chairman, again, Dennis Byrne, CFO with YDOT. I think on average, we were seeing about $100 million extra dollars roughly on average for over the course of the 5 years. So your assessment is correct.
So that's different from the 100 million you were talking about earlier? Or is that the same?
That's the same.
So so that will run out in 4 years? Two more years? How long have you been receiving it?
The bill began. Mr. Chairman, I think it will have been since 21. I believe, is that correct? It's 21.
So just to follow up, Mr. Chair, so the reduction from 100 million down to 70, that's congressional action modifying the IIJA dollars that are coming in?
Can you repeat the question?
Is the $100 million that's been dropped down to the 70, is that a modification of the IIJA, or is that your general revenue stream?
It's a discontinuance of a particular program. So they pulled basically $30 million of a very specific program out of that IDGIP funding.
What was that program?
What was the program?
Yeah, I should know that, Mr. Chairman, but I don't off the top of my head, so I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Committee, any further questions before we dive into the bill itself? Okay.
Yes.
Director, oh, you have a question?
Yeah, Mr.
All right,
Chairman.
yeah, raise your hand. Let me know. Hit me, smack me, whatever you gotta do. Representative Garinger.
Mr. Chairman, Director, you mentioned that there's the deficit of 400 million a year. And you also talked about we are in preservation only mode. So is that 400 million just to maintain in a preservation mode, or does that include the upgrades and safety issues that also need to be taken care of?
Director?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, I appreciate that. It is across the board. Obviously, we're not maintaining our roads at the level that we want. You think about our road surfacing that we have out there today, we've been spreading that peanut butter pretty thin. So a lot of our surfacing, the things that everybody thinks make the road brand new, is a new surfacing, nice shiny lines on the pavement. on average, across the state, that surfacing is in the 12 to 13 years old. The structure that holds up that road, the bottom 12 to 16 inches or 2 foot of structure, has been there 50, 55, 60 years. And so that's the significant piece that concerns us, is how long can we keep spreading that peanut butter to save that structure? So across the board, we have traffic. A lot of our signs are going bad. Our facilities are falling down around our ears. You start looking at a lot of the aeronautics. We have some construction projects that we'd like to do and help augment the federal FAA ideas. So there are some safety projects that were planned in that, some new capacity, but a lot of them are just to continue down that, how to improve the maintenance on the funding. There are hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars worth of projects that are on the wish list, if not billions of dollars that are on the wish list, things that we know we want, we know the customer wants, industry wants, to make things better for their equipment, make things better for safety, decrease congestion. The big one, at least in southeast Wyoming, is the I-80, I-25 interchange. That is probably 10 years behind design right now. It's significant. It's not going to be this is going to be a all hands on deck to figure out how to fund that project. 287 South out of Laramie, that's a $62 million project. So to do some of these projects is not, all right, we'll adjust the STIP a little bit and we can squeeze this one in. This is cutting several districts out of a STIP to make one project happen.
Follow up?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Director, I appreciate that. And to put a finer point on it, I guess what you're telling me is that on your wish, the projects that are on the wish list right now, that is not included in the $400 million shortfall that you're seeing.
Director? Mr. Chairman, about, I'd say 25% of that is on a wish list. Again, looking at that as $100 million. That's 1.5 major projects. I just told you the 287, that's $62 million. So that would be one project. Then we'd have to find a $40 million project, or 220s or whatever to make that work. So there is some of that in the $400 million deficit. I think the easiest thing for everybody to understand is if we found more money and we just fell into a bucket of it, YDOT could spend it, right? We could get some new roads and whatnot. What we're seeing right now is he's spreading peanut butter. I wish they would spread asphalt, but that's, we're doing the best.
What we can afford.
We're doing the best we can. And so the two bills that you're going to see before you committee were your predecessors' attempts at this point to try to find a little bit of that funding. So let's dive right into House Bill 29. Director, I'll have you walk through the bill briefly. It's a pretty small bill. If you just want to touch on that, and then I will, as I said earlier, I'll back clean up for you.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Committee. This is House Bill 29. On page 1, it's the bill summary is just changing the distribution of the second tip of the severance tax to the highway fund rather than going to the permanent mineral trust and the common school land fund, and repealing a distribution to the general fund in the repealer section later, and I'll go into that. Page 2, section 1 is the discussion of that 3914.801B, which is talking about that second tip. And I should just explain a little bit, and I know Representative Nicholas could probably explain this a heck of a lot better than I can, but constitutionally, the first 1.5% of the severance tax goes to the permanent mineral trust fund by constitution. The next tip has statutory opportunities by the legislature. They can appropriate the next amount that goes currently in statute. Half of that goes to the permanent mineral trust and half of it goes to the common school land fund. Did I hit that close enough? And I think, Mr. Chairman, you can back clean up with your graph or your table that you have. The rest of section 1 talks about basically taking the legislative part that is currently in statute, that said that those two funds, that second tip will go to those two funds, the PMTF and the Common Schools, stops that in July 1 of this year. And then the next item there is where those funds from thereafter will go to the highway fund. The next section 2, again, still on page 2, is the repealing portion. And that first section, 3914-801B6, is if the 6, if you go into law, that subsection, sub-Romanet 6, is talking about what happens after 2028. So if you go to 5, it says that the split that goes to the two trust funds will end in 28, and then in 29 and into the future, it would go to it still go to the same funds, but the split isn't 50-50, it goes a third, 2/3. So that's the first repealer. The second repealer, F, is basically a legislative safeguard that if there was a structural deficit, if there was a need to balance the budget, that the legislature has the ability to pull back those funds to help balance the budget. And Mr. Chairman, this, again, Section 3 is effective July 1. I hope I walked that clean enough for you.
That was absolutely perfect, Director. So committee, what you will see, and I will tell you right now, we were contacted by staff during the development and the drafting of this, that repealer of subsection F and section 2 was not originally meant to be in the bill, so that budget balancer and ability of the legislature to be in there. So I'll certainly entertain an amendment as we get towards the movement of this bill or anything along those lines. That was not originally intended to be in this bill, so staff has actually asked me to get that corrected. Beyond that, what I'd like to do is just direct your attention to the handout, one of the handouts of the copious amounts of handouts that you guys got. The first one is going to be the one with the bar graphs going horizontally. And this is exactly what the director was talking about. So it's the second tip of the severance tax that you're looking at here. So 1.5% or 2/3 of the 1.5% severance tax that we have the authority here for. Half of that is $55 million for fiscal year 2025. Half of it is, or for the other half, going to the Common School Permanent Land Fund is another $55 million. What we're looking at doing is taking those two boxes and diverting those into the highway fund. That's what this bill is ultimately doing. So there's two small boxes there. Just imagine taking those out and writing one box in there that just says roads. We'll just say that. One of the things that I think it's important to understand on this is we are also putting that in we're giving the opportunity for WYDOT to use that as they see fit. As we just heard, buildings, those types of things are in critical necessity right now. Purchasing of new snow plows, those types of things, those are all issues that I personally believe the people who are running the department have a better understanding on this on a day-to-day basis than us being down here for 20 or 40 days every other year. So that's the impetus between this bill. We'll open this up for questions from the committee. Committee, do you have any questions for the director or myself that we can help you out with? Representative Nicholas.
So I want to talk about a couple different things and ask a couple different questions. First of all, obviously, I'm intimately involved with the severance tax, where it goes, and what you just read on what's the statutory parts, that was my motion and appropriations that created that, and then switching it back to 2/3, 1/3 in 2028, all in line basically to provide sufficient dollars, general fund dollars for the operations of government. So what this bill does is basically say, right now with new leadership, we're anticipating a 5 to 15% cut across the board on general fund things, and up to 30% over the course of the next 2 or 3 biennium. And yet, what this is doing is even robbing that money more than what's already coming down the pike at us. Right now, there are bills in the legislature that take over $600 million out of the general fund on an annual basis, which means that we go from a 2.3 budget down to about a 1.6 budget, which means the Department of Health is going to lose $300 or $400 million. And so this just so this basically sits on top of that. And so we're prioritizing highways over Department of Health, Department of Family Services by doing this. So I want to know about other alternatives you talked about during the summer. For example, a gas tax. If you raise a gas tax 5 cents, what for both diesel and gas, what revenue does that bring into you? Could you tell me?
That's about right. Yeah,
Director
Mr. Chairman.
Dennis,
Thank you.
either one of you, I will recognize that you may have not, when we start getting into this, you may not have come prepared to really go into depth with all that. So if you can, if you have those numbers off your head.
I do. Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, it's basically for every penny increase in both diesel and gasoline, it's about $4.5 million increase in revenue for YDOT alone. It's about a $6.8 million increase overall. So the difference between that would go to the cities and counties and the normal distributions for fuel tax.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and we've had this issue before. I mean, if we do an increase in gas tax, we can direct it all in one direction, just by statutorily changing that distribution. So that if we did that for all that increase, then that would turn it into about a $16 million a year increase, roughly. Is that fair?
I think the math is right, correct.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, if I can answer the first question of what transpired over the
Please.
interim, the
I was
things
just
that
getting
have
ready
been
to, but
looked
you
at.
bet.
Yeah, I said a little bit earlier that LSO took it upon themselves to go study what other states are doing and came back with a long list, and we can sure represent that, or at least in document form, so you can see the exhaustive list. And I thought LSO did a great job. A lot of what other states do is income tax related, sin tax related, lottery related. You start thinking about that. There's some bills that were brought, or ideas that were brought forward to this for exploration were delivery tax on anything that was being delivered from online purchasing gets a 25-cent per delivery fee. They're doing that south of the border now. Tire tax, whether it's a per tire tax or tax on a NAICS code that has anything to do with the vehicle was explored. Fuel tax was explored very briefly. A lot of these, I don't think gained any traction because they were either an increase of a tax or a new tax. There was not a whole lot of appetite, not to put words in but that was basically what was said. And that's why they didn't go forward. What did come forward was how do we redistribute existing taxes rather than increase taxes? That's what was brought forward and why we're sitting here today and not some of those other ideas.
Yep, exactly. Follow up?
Yeah, I just want to follow up on the fuel tax concept, because when we did the last fuel tax, when we raised it 10 cents, my understanding was that the overall impact at the pump was about a penny to a penny and a half because of the nature of the distribution of the fuel taxes. Is what's your understanding? Am I
Mr.
close?
Chairman, you're right for a day. We saw an increase of fuel for a day at a penny, and then I think it actually went back down. The market absorbs that, and I say that in a way that I act as though nobody's not getting pinched on it. Somebody's getting pinched, right? Whether it's the distributor, whether it's the supplier, somebody's paying that tax at the rack. At the pump, it becomes a free market. Whatever the price will bear is what is bared, regardless of what the tax was.
And just a couple more follow-ups, Mr. Chairman. And
Sure.
the-
I'm going to rein you in just a little bit. Let's make sure we're staying on this bill. I understand that we have a lot of opportunities of other areas we can go into, but let's stay on the severance tax, please.
Well, we can do that, but in order to do it, I'm looking for alternatives to the severance tax. So my preference is that this bill dies. But if you don't have a reason or another mechanism to raise the funds, then it doesn't support my position or help YDOT. So that's the nature of why I'm just going down that road. Mainly because this bill takes money out of the pockets of someone else. And the question is that equitable, is fair, and what's the damage it would cause outside of the Department of Transportation? So But if, for example, we're more than 5 cents higher or lower than all the states around us, or contiguous states right now in fuel tax. So, and at one point, there was a bill to make it so that it fluctuated. In other words, it followed the market. Have you guys looked at that as an alternative so that, right now, the average around us is around 31 cents and we're at 24. So if we had that fluctuation stability, so that we wouldn't have to have a bill every time that it happens, but we just matched our surrounding states, I think, that would be a way that it takes out the political pressures of
So we certainly did do that. We had Miss Little in the back of the room, actually gave us some really good testimony and whatnot. As the director stated, one of the things that this committee hit pretty hard on was finding a way to divert existing revenues as opposed to raising taxes on anything, recognizing the political landscape, especially after August, our second meeting, recognizing what the political landscape looked like of getting a tax basis through. So the bill that we have before us is to divert severance tax. I'm going to pull us back in to make sure that we stay on that bill. I understand where you're coming from, Representative Nicholas. I understand your predisposition of being on appropriations, but the bill that we have before us is for severance tax, and I want to stay where we're at there. So I'm going to bring you back in to make sure that we're talking this bill. Any further questions from you, Representative Nicholas?
That's it.
Okay. Committee, any other questions on the severance tax bill? For YDOT, we will stick with YDOT. Seeing none. Director, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just real quick, Mr. Chairman,
Byrne.
just to answer a previous question from the Representative Nicholas, the 30 million that went away was specifically federal general funds for bridges.
The 30 million?
Yes, the 30
Okay,
million.
thank you.
I do have a follow-up.
Follow up on that? Sure.
As I understand it, you do separate submissions for like the I-80, I-25 interchange. That was something that you received funding for outside the scope of your normal dollars. And so I think you call it a STIF or whatever, I'm not sure how you characterize it. But can you explain that to me, how that works?
Can you do a brief, you used the term and I failed to recognize that. Yeah, no, it's
As a relative, Mr. Chairman, as a relatively new person, acronym central at YDOT, I'm getting to the point where I'm using them without explanation, so I apologize for that. STIP is called is the Statewide Transportation Improvement Plan. That's a project that's been put on it. Usually it's about a 6-year plan that we try to project out as far as we can so we can start finding the funds appropriate. And then once we get the funds, we can start designing and planning and programming that project in. To the point on I-80, I-25, what you're talking about is we will go out and we will hustle really hard. We have a crew that does a great job of applying for federal discretionary grants. That's money on top of our federal formula funds to help fix some of these issues that we have, like the I-80, I-25 interchange. The design was $13 million. So we did not want to pull that out of our existing program STIP. So we went and hustled a discretionary grant and was successful. We got a $13 million grant to help us finish that design so we can start working towards costing it out and where we find those funds. So we've been successful in hustling other discretionary grants. There's truck parking right outside of Laramie at Quealy Dome, and then up a little bit further at Point of Rocks. We're working, we got another grant to do truck parking outside of Evanston. We got another discretionary grant to do the study going up over the Wind River Canyon, try to find an alternative route there, just for a resiliency standpoint. We've been relatively successful, even through the administration that isn't necessarily friendly to our state sometimes. Our team does a great job of hustling as much as they can, but we got wildlife crossing funding. We got zero this time. We were successful on the Cameron project. We got 23-ish million, I think, for that project. We went after the Du Bois project and got skunked. And so you win some, you lose some, but those are the projects that we try to help augment our formula funds with great grant writing and trying to propose that in the best form fashion.
You got skunked, no pun intended there, I'm sure. Out of that, I am curious what your match is required on some of those, because I think that's another portion that I think gets kind of lost in the translation. Sure, you were successful in getting 13 million, but how much of that had to come out of your STIP or other areas because you require a 5% or 10% or 20% match on those grants? So do you have an approximation of how much of those particular projects you guys had to spend out of elsewhere to cover the matches?
Sure, Mr. Chairman, and Dennis can correct me where I go astray. It varies. It depends on the grant, whether it's a raise, whether it's a protect, whether it's wildlife, whatever the acronym that goes into those things. But a lot of them are 90-10. We still have to come up with 10, depending on like this I-80, I-25. If we go after a mega, which if it gets close to the $500 million mark, mega might be the route to go. However, that's a 50-50. So our team is working on thinking through how do we knock that big project out? We can't come up with $250 million. So how can we do it with our other discretionary projects that might be 80-20? And so we save 30%, or 90-10 and we save 40%. And so the team's working hard on how to program that project so the out-of-pocket stateside is less, without having to come to you and say, I need $250 million for one project.
Committee, any further questions for YDOT? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Thank
Mr.
you.
Chairman.
Director Willicks, yeah. Or Commissioner, I guess. You're not a director, you're a commissioner. You don't want that job, do you?
No demotion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim Willicks, Transportation Commission member. I've been on the board for the last 2 years, and I just wanted to add the background. The director has kept the commission completely in the loop on all of these discussions. We've endorsed and talked about these things, the pros and the cons. The commission looks at their fiduciary duty to the budget. They look at our fiduciary duty to the traveling public and how that applies to our fiduciary duty to the roads, so you will, the horizontal and the vertical construction. So I just want to bring that forward to say that the commission has been fully involved and engaged in this discussion with the director and the rest of the staff, and take our fiduciary duty seriously. Should we receive it extra funds, I can assure you it won't be just the director making that decision. It will be a collective decision that we get, representing the people that we represent, and our fiduciary duty we take seriously. So I would just add that he's not on an island, but he's rowing the oars pretty hard.
Appreciate it.
That's all I wanted to add, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it. Any questions for Commissioner Willicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I don't imagine revenues here for this particular bill, right? I have your administrative impact on the other one, just wanted to make sure. And I don't see the governor's office in here any longer, so we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Ms. Little, please.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Kelly Little, and I'm here today representing the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming. And the AGC of Wyoming stands in support of this bill. AGC of Wyoming members are the ones who build, maintain, and repair our roads, bridges, and highways, and they understand better than most the condition the roads are in. Contractors take pride in the quality of their work and how their work has a real-life impact on their neighbors, friends, and fellow Wyoming citizens. Revenue spent on maintaining and improving Wyoming's road system is an investment in Wyoming's future. Just like investing in the financial sector, investing in infrastructure is a prudent decision as it brings a positive return on investment. The longer we wait to shore up the condition of our roads, the more expensive the work will be. Traffic accidents in Wyoming imposed a total of $889 million in economic costs in 2023. Investing in our transportation system is an imperative matter of public safety. Wyoming motorists travel 9.32 billion miles on Wyoming's road system annually. Threats to the state's ability to keep pace with growing transportation infrastructure needs include construction cost inflation, erosion of motor fuel taxes due to inflation, improved fuel efficiency in cars, and the adoption of hybrid and electric vehicles. The Federal Highway Administration's National Highway Construction Cost Index, which measures the rate of inflation in labor and material costs, increased 36% between 22 and 23, and has increased 59% since 2021. We support rational and logical changes in Wyoming's revenue distribution streams that would allow for an enhanced investment in the road system. And I'll stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Ready, any questions for Ms. Little and the Associated General Contractors? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Ms. Little. Any further public testimony? Got some interested parties with their heads down. Nobody wants to look at me in the eyes. There we go. All right. All right, seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close public comment on this, and we will move the bill back up to the dais. Committee, what is your pleasure? Seeing nothing, this bill will die for lack of a motion. Oh,
Mr. Chairman, I move, and I'm not sure of the format we're supposed to follow here,
Sure.
but I move to approve House Bill 29 and send it on to the committee. of the
Okay,
whole.
so we have a motion and a second. Representative Tarver, all right. So motion was from Geringer, second from Tarver. Committee, that brings us to a vote on this, but before we go into a vote, thank you, I appreciate that not everybody has done this a time or two. So what we will do is we will go line by line. We'll start out with this bill. We'll start with the process. We'll entertain any amendments that you may have. If you do have an amendment, just certainly smack me or yell my name and we will get you recognized. So we'll start out with the first page. Going here into section 1, there's not much we can really do with this other than the title. If we need to adjust the title, we can. We'll move into the guts of the bill, which is on page 2. And page 2, really the guts of where we're going to be at is going to be in lines 13 and 14, and also in page 2, line 16. Any amendments that would like to be made? Representative Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, we have the text of a proposed amendment here that I would like to entertain. I would move that we, on page 1, line 3, we delete the line entirely.
So you can just say, just move the amendment here
Okay.
as drafted. Yep, and that'll save you the work on that since she has that.
Okay.
So-
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we pass this proposed amendment.
So we have a motion, second by Tarver. And that is, just so everybody's aware, the proposed amendment is to strike F on this, get rid of that balanced budget approval authority for the legislature if needed. So on line 16, really what we're doing here, and then the corresponding amendments to make sure everything else is good, is strike out subsection F from this bill. So we would still keep the after 2028 split. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. That motion passes. Any further amendments? None? Discussion, Representative Nicholas.
Okay, so committee, I'm going to speak against the bill and ask for a no vote on the bill for several different reasons, and I just want to walk you through what those reasons are. But let me speak in generalities. Of those $9 billion miles of car transportation driving across on the roads of Wyoming, many of us up here constitute a lot of those miles, me particularly. And I do a lot of driving around most of the other states around us. And I can tell you, without a doubt, our roads are better than any other state around us. So when I have a presentation that says that the roads aren't as nice as what we would like to see, meaning the highway department, I can understand that, but how I can understand reality is that we have better roads than almost any state around us. And so in terms of the durability, the shoulder size, the care and maintenance, we're not in a bad position. And I've been on appropriations for 14 years. There's always a wish list that we receive that comes out of this committee, which is the Committee for the Department of Transportation. And we typically, on a routine basis, say, demonstrate to us the real need and as compared to the states around us and the amount of dollars we receive. And frankly, as much as they would love to have $400 million, there's not another agency that doesn't need more money to operate in the state of Wyoming. Now we're in a deficit situation where all agencies are going to get cut, and yet now there's this desire to take money out of other agencies, and particularly the general fund, to shore up the highway funds. And my first and foremost suggestion in this, what makes this so important as compared to the Department of Health and taking care of our special needs folks, and providing healthcare benefits that are going to be cut with the current administration that's running the legislature? I mean, it's coming. And if you look at the bills in front of us right now, there are over $600 million being pulled out of the general fund. This one is, it's $55 million a year, it's $110 million per biennium. So that's 1/5 of the money that's already going to come out, just based upon the folks that are, foreseeing and trying to cut taxes, but also cut spending across the board. And so the rationale is what's so special about Highway Department now that they should be getting a shot in the arm when everyone else is getting a finger cut off or a hand cut off? So where does that 55 or 100 million go? Those are the dollars that basically go to the general fund to do the operations of business for the state of Wyoming. So that literally is, and if you look at the pie chart in your data sheet, in your data book, that's where that money goes. 30% goes to Department of Health, part of it goes to UW, part of it goes to Department of Corrections, goes to community colleges, Department of Family Services, A&I, the Business Council. All of those will be impacted more by taking this particular action. And the next bill is another 140 million on biennium. So as a total, that adds up to $330 million a biennium that we want to take away from everybody else to take care of our highways, because apparently it's more important than everybody else. And I would just suggest to you that it's not. That's number one, because we have to be fair to everybody and under the situations that are in front of us. Who should be paying for roads? I mean, even though no one likes a gas tax, the folks that use the road should be paying for the roads. And the wonderful thing about a gas tax is 60 or 70% of it are paid by out-of-staters traveling through or from. And if you raise it 10 cents, you get about a 1 or 2% increase in the actual at the pump. So it doesn't impact the Wyoming residents that much. It's just kind of a remarkable math, but it's the truth. And Representative Mann had made those presentations to us over the years, and it's fascinating when you sit down and you figure out how it really works. So even though we have a leadership that does not want to have any tax increase, this is one that really isn't a tax increase because we don't feel it. Other people pay it. I think we just have to do a better job selling it. More importantly, we don't want to do it at the expense of the Department of Health and Family Services and those folks. So what other sources are there? And how can we cross this bridge if this bill dies? And I've got a couple different ideas to do that. And I would propose working with this committee and with the powers that be in order to do that. If we would add 2% out of the pari-mutuel account, that's the equivalent to about $30 million a year. And why couldn't we do that? We could take a component of the lottery dollars. We could take a component of several different other locations to find money to get, I don't know if we're going to get to 260 million or 330 million, but we can get a long way down the pipeline on that. In order to get there and in time to do that, I think that having a one-turn, just taking money out of the LSRA, if we take 100 million or 150 million this year, to provide that while we work through this and put this all together, I think that's a better idea than going and passing this particular bill. I mean, there's just lots of alternatives to do it that I think that we can get more buy-in, and we don't damage the other state agencies around us by saying highways are more important than Department of Health and Department of Corrections So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, Representative Nicholas. Representative Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the comments of the very learned representative from appropriations, formerly of appropriations. I am concerned as somebody who was in the practice of civil engineering, what the overall impacts of not having properly funded our infrastructure as it deteriorates over time. We've seen issues across the state where we don't have the proper funding in place, whether it's at the city level or the county level or the state level. And the deterioration that happens turns into an emergency that all of a sudden we have to pay a lot more money for in order to fix the issue. And I appreciate also the alternatives that you've raised. I truly do. I think this could be one way to do it, but I also think that if we do proceed down and look at other potentially better funding sources, I would be in favor of that. But so I guess I'll have to say on this bill, I'll be opposed, but only because you make the convincing argument, Representative, that there are other better alternatives.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, we're going to start. You know what? We got everybody. So I'm going to start this way. And we're just going to come back down here. Representative McCann, please. This is discussion? Oh, okay. No, you're just fine.
This is one of those darn if you do, darn if you don't type things. You know, as uncomfortable as it is for you guys to come up here, I really don't envy myself having to make this decision. So my sentiments echo Representative Nicholas. The fact that we probably do have better roads than everyone else, I echo that as well. It's just a testament to how good of a job you guys are doing with what you have. So I just wanted to say I appreciate that. Yield back.
Okay. Anything from you, Representative Banks?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, thank you. I kind of echo the thoughts that have already been said without going too much into what's already been said. While I agree that I think we could do some things that'll improve our roadways, I just don't think that that's a wise use of these funds. The Permanent Mineral Trust Fund, the Common School account, I think those dollars need to stay where they're at. And so I'm looking forward to working with the committee on some other options that we could go push forward from this committee. But as it stands, I'm going to be opposed to this bill.
Representative Tarver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be for the bill. I want the body to decide where we should be spending our money. I feel like this is something that's bigger than just us here in this committee. And I think the body can read this bill and they can decide for themselves. I think it's been real apparent. We don't want to raise taxes. We want to use our money the best way we know how. And I think all of our constituents need to be represented on this bill, and they should all have a part in it. So I will be an aye vote.
Representative Wiley.
Mr. Chairman, I yield.
Representative Posey, anything from you?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree with some of the discussion that Representative Nicholas brought forward. We're looking at probably rob Peter to pay Paul kind of process. And I think there's other opportunities and options that we could actually research to get more funding for our roads. And I agree with him. We have the best roads anywhere that we all drive a long distance in Wyoming. But I think I would be more in favor of looking at another option. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Representative Nicholas.
It did also occur to me, Mr. Chairman, that in addition to finding sources of funding, I think we have to do that, and I think we can. One of them will be the next bill. But I also think it would be worth our while to take certain dollars of our savings and put them into a generational account, so that similar to what we're doing for education and for the general fund, so that $100 million in, the rule of 72, in 24 years, it'll turn into $1 billion. And that will provide hundreds of millions of dollars per biennium into the future forever. And this is a good opportunity to do it. And I think it behooves us. So once again, we stop fighting these battles of who we're going to pay what money to. So I'll also be posing that as well.
Committee, appreciate all the discussion. I appreciate the experience and the knowledge coming from my fellow appropriator. Knew that this was going to have a tough hill to climb with his experience and being able to discuss this. What I will turn your attention to is this particular sheet here. This particular sheet here kind of tells the story of, as we heard, robbing Peter to pay Paul. We are going to pull people away from the general fund. We're going to hurt somebody to pay for others. I'm going to direct your attention to the area about 2/3 to the way to the right. You'll see a column that says BFY 19. And you'll notice right there at A, and B, as you go down that column, those zeros are where this committee and where I entered this discussion back in 2018, 2017, when this agency was pulled away from the general fund. If you look to the left of those lines, you can see in that totals section, we started off with 25 million, 228 million, 230 million, all the way down till 2017 when we hit a fiscal cliff. And we really had to do some penny pinching across this. We had a $360 million shortfall my first year in the legislature. Governor Meade directed us all to figure out a way to fix that. And one of the ways was to take YDOT off of the general fund. So that's exactly what we did. We robbed Peter to pay Paul. We took the money from our roads, and that was the very first year that I heard Director Panos at the time come to us and say, we think we can figure this out. We think we can do it. Give us a small raise in the driver's licenses and a small raise in the state registration for your vehicles. With that, we think we're going to be able to handle this. I will tell you right now, as your chairman and as the person that has served on this committee for 8 years now, that was the beginning of the end for this process. We gave them about 40 million-ish with that, I believe, somewhere in that range is what that totaled out to be. At that time, the budget shortfall, I believe, was just shy of 40 million. So we thought we were going to be good. We offset that 40 million that you see there in that last column in that last row. The problem is what you see in that other expenditure graph where that buying power started deteriorating rapidly. I understand and I appreciate this committee's discussion. I absolutely appreciate every single one of you representing your constituents. I will be an aye vote on this bill strictly and solely for the fact that I have been here, I have watched this happen, and I do believe that we have neglected our roads. I do understand that we're doing a good job, and I appreciate the director and every director before this doing the best they can with what they have. We're getting to a point now where they're not going to be as nice. And I wish we had the time and the ability for the director and his team to come up here and show us the graph of when you start deteriorating, it's a gradual slope and then it's a cliff. And we're approaching that cliff of not even be able to keep what we have available to us. And it's not going to be any more of relaying a new section of asphalt on the top. It's going to be completely constructing and reconstructing entire roads, and it's going to cost us 10, 15, 20 times the amount that it does right now. So that is why I'll be voting for this. The motion is on the floor as the bill is amended. Donna, can I go ahead and get a roll call on House Bill 29 as amended?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh.
one comment.
Certainly.
So I'd like you to look at this sheet, and if you go back to 2017, 2016, federal dollars it received was 550 million, and then that went up to 850 million. So the reason we didn't add money during those periods is because they were getting more and more money from the federal government. And that's one, so I just wanted to rebut that comment. But I also suggest that if we put substantial amounts of general fund or other monies into the Boyd and Hiring Department, there will be a very strong movement to bring you back within the budget and have a regular review, just like every other agency. And I don't think you or the department would appreciate that very much. But that's a real risk.
I appreciate that, and you're absolutely right, Representative Nicholas. That is a possibility, and I do believe it would probably be a high probability. I won't even call it a possibility. It would be high probability that that would then become the scrutiny and the excuse to bring you in for that. So With that, committee, anything else before we take roll call? Seeing none, Ms. Shippen?
This is a roll call vote on House Bill 29 as amended. Representative Banks,
No.
Representative Geringer,
No.
Representative Larson left an absentee vote of no. Representative McCann? No. Representative Nicholas? No. Representative Posey? Representative Tarver?
Aye.
Representative Wiley?
Oh.
Chairman Brown?
Aye.
Mr. Chairman, we have 2 aye and 7 no.
Well, we will not carry that on the floor, so I won't be assigning that one to anybody. Thank you for your hard work, committee. We have got about 45 minutes left here. We're going to roll right into House Bill 33. Director, I don't think we really, I think the biggest thing on this one is I'll just have you do a brief synopsis of it. Again, we understand exactly what the process is. I'll just have you walk through the bill, and then again, I'll back clean up with the graphic that I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, Darren Westby, Director of Wyoming Department of Transportation. This is House Bill 33. The summary is amending the distribution of sales and use tax on motor vehicles and trailers to the highway fund. Page 1, Section 1, creating a new subsection. R is the sales tax and P is the use tax in 3916 111B, and then in 3615 111 is the sales tax. So the 15 is the sales tax, 16 is the use tax. Line page 2 in the distribution, 3915 111. The revenues earned within this section. I should make it very clear that this is just the state side, not the entire sales and use tax. What was discussed in the interim was just to focus on the state side, not to touch the local distributions. And so this is to send the sales tax and use tax to the highway fund. And then it goes on to page 3 on the use side. And then section 2 applies again to the motor vehicles and trailer purchases from a timing perspective, starting July 1 of this year, and applies to the sales and use tax going forward. Section 3 is this is where I think it got into a programming issue with and I can have Director come up and talk about the desire here is starting, this isn't a flip the switch and redistribute the funds. There's programming involved to make that happen, and this was just a stopgap to utilize an equivalent amount of general fund to send to the highway fund until they can get that programming to where it goes automatically. And then after 27, they feel that they can have that done, then it would just go automatically instead of having to have a backfill of general fund for that 1 year period. And then section 4, page 3 is the effective date of July of this year.
Thank you, Director. Appreciate that. Briefly, committee, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn your attention to the other side of that same sheet that I had you look at just a little bit earlier. This one at the top says estimated distribution for 2025. Took this out of the old good Representative Harshman's book where you just photocopy the data book and then do little handwritten notes to show you what we're doing here. You'll notice the square above, there's 69% of state sales and use tax that is distributed to the general fund. We are going to take only vehicles that are on that are sold, and a portion of that, roughly $70 million, that's the rough estimate that would come out of this, would then be deposited into the highway fund. So the nexus on this, as we attempted to look into this process, is where is the nexus of putting money towards our roads? And we figured that if you're going to be buying a vehicle, chances are you're going to be using it on the road. There's probably a fair argument for some of those ranchers and farmers that don't use it on their, two-track and whatnot across there. But the vast majority of these vehicles that are purchased and have high value are going to be the ones that are paying that. So that's the nexus of this bill. This was brought to us at the very end of our interim work and was brought forward as an interim committee bill. Director, I appreciate your information. Do we have any questions for the director or myself on this bill? Representative Banks.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So, just so I understand clearly, so at the end of fiscal year 2026, and then thereon, it's going to be a transfer of roughly $70 million from the general fund into the highway fund. That I understand.
Representative, it's not necessarily a transfer out of the general fund as much as it is a diversion from where it would be going into the general fund. It would just be directed into the highway fund at that point. And that is also why you will see, we do have Director Henson here with the Department of Revenue. You'll see, actually, you guys don't have a copy of this. There is an administrative impact for this. It's going to cost us roughly about $100,000 at the agency level for the Department of Revenue to do a one-time programming of this. So it would eliminate that dumping into one bucket and then transferring it over to another. This would just be a direct transfer. Okay, committee, anything else? Thank you, Director. Appreciate it. Thank you. Director Henson, would you, Mr. Fanning, come on up, sir. Administrator Fanning, if you'll please just introduce yourself to the committee.
Got it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the committee, my name is Brett Fanning. I'm the Excise Tax Administrator at the Wyoming Department of Revenue. Once again, thank you so much for having us and appreciate the discussion. I think all the details of the bill have generally been outlined beautifully. The Department of Revenue just has two kind of comments here. The first one is this sales tax is collected by our county treasurers. And at the end of the month, when the county treasurer send in that sales tax and use tax to the Department of Revenue, they actually send it on a completely separate return than our normal vendors. So that's one piece of why we're able to do this with motor vehicles. We have that categorized separately. We've got separate returns. So we really know what this bucket is. Now, nothing is going to change at the county treasurer level or with them. They're still going to send in the same returns to us. It's going to come into the Department of Revenue system. That's where this bill comes in. And then we're diverting that into a different bucket. And Mr. Chairman, just like you mentioned, we do have an IT programming cost here. So if I were to buy a $100 car here in Laramie County, that's $6 in sales and use tax that I'm going to pay. We need this one-time programming in our system so that we can divert that. I'm going to use rough figures, half of that. Half of that generally goes to the state, and then half of that generally goes to our local partners. This programming is so we can separate out that bucket, and so we can appropriately still get the pennies and the 30% of the state general fund to our local partners, but then the state's portion is now going over to WYDOT. And with that, Mr. Chairman, you have our one-time fiscal note. It was $107,000. That was outlined by our third-party programming IT team. And I believe I provided that with my fiscal note if you still don't have that. But it was $107,801. They do time and materials, so again, that cost could go down, but that is the estimate that they gave us. So,
Committee,
stand for any questions.
If you want to see a copy of that administrative impact, I've got a copy of that. I'm more than happy to show you guys that. You guys can see everything that they have here, so.
Mr. Chairman, my question is, I don't see that in the bill.
There is no appropriation in the bill. It's just an administrative impact. So this is what is sent after the bill is drafted, after everything goes through the process. This is what the departments tell us this would ultimately cost to implement. There is no appropriation in the bill, so there is no fiscal note. This is just an administrative impact. So
I do have a question, just in terms of timing and payout. Once you have the program up and running, and with talking about Section 3, the cash flows. So what is anticipated that, just explain to me how it rolls out.
Mr. Fanning?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, yes, absolutely. So with the Section 3 part, and as was mentioned, it's going to take us a little bit of IT programming time. So for this first year, it's just going to be a transfer at the end of that fiscal year. That's just due to limitations in getting our IT programming up and running. Then going forward, it's going to fall in our normal distribution path where every month there is going to be this transfer. And then based on our fiscal note estimate, that's going to be around that 70 million per year.
So, follow up.
Follow up?
So that means that then during that first year, you'll just take direct dollars out of the general fund or to make those monthly payments, or there will be no monthly payments till the end of the year?
Director or Administrator?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, Representative, the way it was discussed in the interim was that we would hold these funds until the end of the fiscal year and then distribute it.
Is there,
Follow up?
yeah, I mean, why? What, it seems to me that if we appropriate the dollars and the dollars are there ought to be a way to get them, even if it's a rounded number or an estimate. Because you have the money in the coffers. You can't do it through longhand.
Mr. Fanning?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Nicholas, yes, it's certainly an option that we can explore on how the distribution will work for that first year. Certainly open for discussion there.
Okay. Committee, anything else for the Department of Revenue and their administrative impact, roughly 108,000, we'll call it. We'll just round up. I like round numbers. Seeing no questions. Thank you, Administrator Fanning. Appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And again, don't see anybody else from the executive branch, so we'll go ahead and open this up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Ms. Little, you could just stand back there and say ditto on this if you'd like.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Kelly Little with the Associated General Contractors of Wyoming. I would say, yeah, I would like to echo the comments I made earlier about just some of the need. And I also would like to say that this bill, I think, is maybe more palatable because of the direct nexus of those taxes being paid by the users of the road. So that is one thing to consider when you're making your decision here. Yep, I guess that's what I have, and I'll stand for questions. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for AGC and Ms. Little? Seeing
Thank
none?
you.
Thank you. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close public comment. We'll bring the bill back up to the dais. Committee, what's your pleasure?
Move the bill.
Moved by Wiley and seconded by Banks.
I do have a question.
Discussion / question, yes.
My question is, if we made this effective immediately and directed the department to pay out a estimated amount of what the collected taxes are, would that be feasible?
Right, do you want to, or director? Get the big guns here. Ms. Henson, if you'll please just identify yourself for the record.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, Brenda Henson, Director of the Department of Revenue. Thank you for the question. So there's a lag time with when sales tax is paid at the local county treasurer's office and then when they remit that to the Department of Revenue. We do monthly distributions, but the reason for the language in the bill is that we'll know because as Mr. Fanning indicated, we get those reports from each of the 23 county treasurers on a monthly basis. And so we don't have to guess, but that piece of that is that when we do a distribution of sales tax right now, every penny of sales and use tax is distributed exactly the same. That formula works the same. What we're doing in this bill is changing only for these dollars.
Right.
Are we going to, when we do that month-end distribution, we're going to say, this amount of money that typically goes in the general fund now is going to go over here. While we know what those amounts are because of what the treasurers give us, we just don't have a program in place that would do that. It would be manual. But I will say, from an accounting perspective, I'm troubled doing manual changes in that distribution because those distributions happen every night. We happen to get these returns from the county treasurers at the end of the month, but transactions in our sales tax system happen every night, every transaction.
Yes.
Just to follow up, in fact, I think I saw a report, 2 counties that are behind in their remissions to you. just recently, but is that something different? That's,
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
Representative, that is something different. And it's actually municipalities that are,
yeah, okay. Yeah.
so, but with that, the focus here is trying to ensure there's an audit trail for all of those dollars and our due diligence in recognizing. Now, another thing that happens with all sales tax is there's an opportunity for amended returns. So every month, county treasurers, they do their report, but sometimes the taxpayer will go into that county treasurer and say, I paid that in error. Here's the updated information, and they'll actually file amended returns. You may recall 2 sessions ago, this body provided us with an appropriation to actually make those a automated process where they could go onto our online portal and county treasurers could do that automated in a digital manner. Prior to that, we were doing those by hand. Took us a while to get the funding to get that programming done, but I certainly don't want to go backwards in that accountability piece. That's my only concern.
Follow-up?
What's the lag time?
Pardon?
What is the lag time between, is it a month, is it 2 months?
So it would be 2 months
Okay.
in that lag time. One thing about this is this isn't changing the rate of the sales tax, anything like that. So that's not a concern. It's just that distribution piece. And as far as, is it possible, I believe, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Fanning can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the way the bill's written is that we wouldn't actually hold the money. We end up distributing everything just like we do today. But at the end of that fiscal year, we know how much of that we transferred to the general fund really should have gone to the highway fund. And we would have to do a transfer from the general fund to the highway fund after we know that exact amount. It isn't that we'll actually hold the funds. We don't typically hold
Thank you.
money.
Okay. I just have a quick question. Would it be easier if we just said we take all the money and take local communities' portion of this and just keep it all?
I believe that was a statement as opposed to a question.
I'm just curious. Isn't that correct? Thank you, Director.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Committee, any further questions? Any further discussion on this bill? Okay, let's walk through this bill really quickly. It's pretty straightforward as the director walked us through. House Bill 33, page 1, any amendments? Page 2. Page 3.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Nicholas.
So I just have a general amendment. And what I would like to do is modify the amount being taken from the current amount to basically cut it in half. So it would be, and I'm not sure how the language would fit in. So that's just a conceptual amendment. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if you look at the fiscal note, it comes down to the total funds on a biennial basis is around 140 million. So I'm just cutting that in half to 70 million.
Okay. Donna, what I'll do is I'll work with you. I will ensure that that's the language that we're looking at. And what I'll do is I'll probably have you work with me and the attorneys. But yes, the conceptual amendment is, as stated, we would do basically 1/2 of the amount of the sales and use tax at the state level would be directed to the highway fund. So if you look at your fiscal impact on the back at that 69 million right now, you would slice that in half. And then that would be doubled for the biennial portion. So what you're looking at there, instead of seeing that as a fiscal year, you would see that as a fiscal biennium number. Any question? Oh, do we have a second on that?
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Representative Banks. Any discussion on that?
So I'll just
Please.
explain my rationale to the committee. So this bill is actually a greater impact to the general fund, the bill that we just killed. It's 140 million a biennium. So that's, once again, it's really kind of the same argument. We're taking 140 million out of the general fund at a time that the general fund is declining, and that we're going to have cuts to Department of Health and other agencies, and in giving it to the Highway Department in order for roads. And I would just respectfully submit that to take 140 million biennium out of the general funds now would have a substantial detrimental impact to the Department of Health, to the Department of Family Services. It just would, because there's no indication of where this cut is going to go or how it's going to happen. So theoretically, it will be proportional, which means the Department of Health will be the one that has the greatest impact. And I just think that when we know there are other cuts coming to the general fund right in front of us, over 600 million besides these, that now is not the time to be cutting the general fund, but with the understanding that we need to help the Highway Department, and with my discussions earlier, that we'll find more money. I thought that 70 million out of the general fund at biennium is still a lot, but 140 is, I just think, is too impactful.
Let's go Representative Banks and then Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think that this whole general idea is a great idea. I like the redistribution. I think it's a far better idea than the first one we had. I think that, echoing some of the concerns, I think we need to see the impacts of it. We give them half, let those dollars kind of build up into the highway fund. We see what the other impacts are to pulling those funds out of the general fund. And then if it's a good impact, we see that there is money that we can allocate later on. We can always come back and make it for the full amount. I think right now, while we're setting this up, 70 million is a good amount to get us going. And then when everything starts to fall into place and we can kind of see the impacts of decisions we make as a legislative body, we can come back and address it as needed. So I'm going to stand in support of this amendment.
Representative Geringer.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I might take a slightly different approach to say that you always ask for more than what you might be willing to settle for. And so if we ask for half of it right now, we might get that whittled down to a quarter or even less. And so I would prefer to see this amount stay where it's at. We know that this is going to undergo much more scrutiny, and so I'd like to ask for the full amount at this point. Let the appropriators take a look at it and move this on to have some further scrutiny and decisions made from it. But I would stand against this amendment.
Anything further? Okay. Yes, Representative Tarver, Vice Chairman Tarver.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would agree with Representative Geringer on this. Let's move it forward as is and see what happens.
Okay. Ready? Nothing else? All those in favor of the conceptual amendment, and I will work with Donna and LSO on this to make sure we do it if it's passed, is to basically reduce this in half for a yearly basis, or make the 70 million a biennial number. All those in favor of the amendment, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no.
No.
And amendment fails. Any further discussion and/or amendments? We have page 3. The only thing further that we have here is section 3 and 4, the effective date. Anything further? Seeing none. Ms. Shippen, would you please call roll on House Bill 33?
Okay, roll call vote on House Bill 33, Vehicle Sales and Use Tax Distribution Highway Fund. Representative Banks.
Aye.
Representative Geringer.
Aye.
Representative Larson left an absentee vote of aye. Representative McCann. Aye. Representative Nicholas. Aye. Representative Posey. Aye. Representative Tarver.
Aye.
Representative Wiley.
Aye.
Chairman Brown.
Aye.
You have 9 ayes, Mr. Chairman.
All right. committee, something that's going to be a little bit different out of this committee for the returning members, and certainly new for those of you that may be on other committees. We're going to do floor sponsors of these bills, right? So you'll be carrying these bills, but I'm going to assign 2 bill sponsors and/or ask for 2 members to help out with this. What this is trying to do is assist in the process is when you're a bill sponsor up on the floor, trying to get the people that want to come talk to you in the ear and have those conversations with you while you're also trying to field the questions out on the floor becomes a little bit problematic and a little bit harder to do. So we'll have 2 floor sponsors for every bill that comes out of this committee if they are committee-sponsored bills and/or if they come over from the Senate and they are individual bills over there as well. So do I have any volunteers for this particular bill to carry this on the floor? If not, I'll assign them. Okay, got Representative Geringer as one. Okay. We have Representative Geringer and Representative Wiley. I'll also ask both of you to pay attention to this. I will be re-referring this bill to appropriations. I'll ask you guys to show up for the re-referral and take a listen to what they have to say on this. Again, they won't be able to kill the bill or anything along those lines. It'll just be more for notification to them that we're going to be taking $70 million a year out of the budget. They need to be aware of that. So we'll resend this back over, Donna, make sure that we have that for appropriations. With that, committee, anything further for the good of the order? Seeing none, we're adjourned. Thank you.